Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order for the City of Monona Plan Commission, Monday, December 11th, 2023. Doug, go ahead and call the roll.
Chair Moore,
Here?
Alder DePula,
Here.
Ms. Fox,
Here.
Mr. Chapman,
Here.
Mr. Homburg,
Here.
Mr. Stein.
Here.
Mr. Grice and Ms. Fallett are both excused.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from October 23rd, 2023?
Move approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Did I get a second?
Yes.
Patrick.
Okay, great. Any changes, corrections, additions to the minutes? Hearing none?
No, I have one.
John.
Sorry, I have
John?
one. The bottom of page 8, regarding the Bloom project. When the vote came up, I did not vote. And so the motion says it carried unanimously, which it did not. It did without my vote. So, and the reason I didn't vote was I think there's been a lot of meetings and a lot of discussions on this project that I recently joined the Plan Commission and did not know. So I didn't feel comfortable voting yea or nay.
Could be recorded as an abstention.
I'll mark it as such. In the future, I'll make a note
Yeah,
to,
you should always announce it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Understood. Understood. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Anything else?
Nothing else.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Approving the minutes as amended.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Minutes carried. I see no reason to change the order here tonight, so we'll continue with the appearances. Is there anybody here to make an appearance on something that does not have a public hearing tonight?
No, not in the room.
Okay. Thank you. Then we'll close the appearance section. There is no unfinished business. So we'll move to new business number 7, a public hearing on the request by Jim. Sorry, Jim, you're going to help. You have to help me pronounce your last names. Peachum?
I need you here. It's Pecon?
Pecon?
Pecon.
Okay, and Mary Jo
Presta Giacomo.
Presta Giacomo for approval of a special event permit for a grade change between natural and finished grade greater than 2 feet at 5400 Midmore Road, case number 2-017-2023. Jim or whoever might be representing you tonight, the floor is yours for the public hearing portion of this.
Is Jason, is that Jason Fraction from Heart and Noble?
He is.
Jason, I don't know if you wanted to speak or if I wanted to speak.
I have to just reach out and back on.
I guess what's presented is that we are, I'll go ahead. The goal of this home, first of all, was to fit into a neighborhood that's existing, established, and I did not want to build a home from the front that looked like it was going lot line to lot line. And I had a survey done in 2021 that presented, which was basically put the floor level at what you see in the documents, and that would be on page 21 of 33. At 100 is what the current house is at right now. Our goal is to build an EDA home, as we're elderly, and so we're moving the driveway to the uphill side and trying to get zero entry from the driveway into the house. Zero entry other places in the home is not that important to us, as long as we can get in and out if incapacitated or upcoming knee replacements, etc. So in doing that, our goal was to try to dovetail into the recent remodel to our neighbors to the north. That would be the Shane Baker residence. And they extended the garage to within 7 feet of the property line and kept the same level as the original garage, thus putting it quite a ways up in the air. So the existing lot line right now, and I don't know the exact measurement, it's somewhere between maybe 24 and 26 feet. There's virtually 3+ steps to get into the home right now from the grade level of the home. And by putting the driveway in this thing, we were going to reduce that grade, and then in order to get a higher basement than what's in the current home, it's only 7.5 feet, and that's without ductwork to the bottom of the joist. We felt that we needed to raise the level of that floor level from what's currently identified on the survey maps from 100 to possibly 100 or 100.5. That would allow us to dovetail in better, I think, with the lot line to the north. Our goal is to try to landscape those two lot lines together without providing two retaining walls to separate the lots. And so we're asking for this variance to increase just on that side, in the area where the two homes kind of abut with each other up to the face of Midmore, to raise that more than the 2 foot allowed without exception. And we're working with engineers to make sure that none of our neighbors are impacted with water. And so the idea is that we would, from that 101 level, flow water from the front to Midmore and then maintain water to the back. And then I worked with Tim Stanley. I've talked with him a lot. We're at the same time, he's got a couple areas on his property that would be to the south of us that have some low spots that during certain seasonal conditions where the ground's frozen and things like that, there's some water retainage taking place for a while until it soaks in. So it's hard to grow grass in that area and things like that because of the water thing. So we would work with him in to kind of mitigate that and possibly bring his property up a little bit with ours on that side. There's really not going to be much elevation change. There might be some back there on the Tim and Linda Stanley on the south property line. All of this really will pretty much pertain to between Shane and us to bring that level up. And also, right now, the current level is below Midmore level. And that's why the house has 2 foot from the floor to where the grade level currently is at 2 foot plus. So we would try to bring that grade up some so that we would slope from the home slightly to Midmore rather than having a huge exposed foundation. And then nothing behind, if you took a look at the original survey, nothing behind the original pine or big maple tree in the middle of the property. We don't intend to change any of that elevation at all. That would be pretty much all kept at approximately the same level as it is right now. So any water, in talking with people that have lived there for 30 years, Tim and Linda, and I don't know if Tim's there, he said he was gonna come to the meeting. I'm relying on 30 years of his experience living there and how the water flows from Nichols down across all the properties and kind of goes to the low spot in an area, and it just kind of absorbs into the ground from our property to Tim and to the neighbor next door. That's kind of the area that it kind of settles in. So our goal is to be able to raise more than 2.5 feet to allow our our driveway to slope and get the zero clearance into the home. I'm relying on the engineers to handle all the water flow and which way it's gonna go. And Darren, hope from we've kind of communicated briefly just to make sure that there's clear understanding as to what was being presented there. So that's the goal of this, and I don't know if anyone else wants to interject anything or not, but that's kind of what the goal is, and we just felt it would be much better to be able to landscape and flow, just for the neighbor, benefit of the neighbor and benefit of all the people involved, to be able to bring these two lots together rather than having this huge discrepancy, to the north. It just doesn't make sense to have those big walls there, and it just makes the neighborhood ugly, I think. So the goal is to make everything come together.
Jim, this is Jason. Is this working? Oh. Is it working now?
You're on.
Okay, you can hear me? Jim, can you
Yeah,
hear me?
Jason, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. This is Jason DeNoble, and I just want to add that by raising the grade, we will actually be able to direct more water to the street and push it further to the back and alleviate the, current existing drainage issue with the low spot with the Sullivans to the south. So we will actually have the downspouts hard piped, and the hard pipe will take the water out to the street, close to the street, so it can drain out with a very, very small, like almost invisible kind of berm, so to say, or more of a swale in the middle of the Peckins lot, and that will direct all that roof water away from the Sullivans.
That's Stanley, that's Tim and Linda Stanley, not Sullivan.
Oh,
Sorry. Yeah.
sorry. I don't know why, yeah, Sullivan in my phone. Yeah, I don't know why it was in my phone that way.
Yeah, no, it's Tim and Linda Stanley.
Okay, thank you. Darren, did you want to say anything at this point, or since you were just mentioned, or are you just here in case the commission members have something to ask you? Darren Pope?
Yep, I'm here.
Hi.
Thanks, Nancy. Hi.
Hi.
I guess I was here, Doug invited me to be at the meeting in case any of the commissioners had any questions.
Okay.
And if Jim or Jason had any questions, I did take a look at the plan and had some comments on it.
Okay, great. Just, I didn't know if you were planning on speaking during the public hearing or you wanted to wait for the commission. Happy to have you for the commission.
Okay, I can wait till then, that's fine.
Okay, great. Is there anyone else here to speak during the public hearing section?
We did receive, I did receive a parent's phone from Tim and Linda Stanley. They are here in the room. I don't know if they'd like to come up.
You can stay.
Yeah.
Be happy to stay. We've been, Tim and Linda Stanley, we live next door. And we've been all talking collaboratively together. So we've been talking with Peckins and with the builders and everybody.
Could you, sorry, Tim, could you lean into your mic a little bit?
Well, I don't know if this one's on.
It's not. It needs a battery.
So we live directly south, so our lot is low, it's always been low, so our concern is between our two houses, we're about 2 feet lower than Jim's house. So there's an area there that's right now is soggy, and in the spring, before the frost is out of the ground, we have a little standing water there. And then I guess in 2018, we've had it different times. The water starts up at Nichols Road, and it's like a river when we get these torrential rains, and it flows about 15 feet wide down behind all those houses, and when it comes behind Jim's, it's probably 30 feet off the back of his house, and then it flows around our house, and so it's like this river. And then it wraps around our house, and it comes out in the easement between our house and our neighbor's house, which city's got a 20-foot easement there. And it likes to try and creep in between, but we don't get a lot of that. Most of the water there is just what comes down and sits there. And you know, the current house, Jim's current house there, he's gonna tear down, there's no gutters on, downspouts on the garage. We're taking on a little bit more, and our gutters run in between there too, plus our sump pump. So we're gonna take our gutters and turn them east and west instead of to the north, so that should help. Jim and Jason are doing a whole bunch of stuff with their gutters underground to divert. The one thing I will say though, Jim, on the north side, it's gonna be, and I didn't hear the exact, is it 30 inches is what it was, Jason? Yeah. But I think it's gonna carry through, you know, towards the majority of the house, right? And then, so our concern was if it's gonna carry that 30 inches all the way over, so, you know, 30 inches higher than 2 feet is already 2 feet. Our concern with these guys was, well, at what point, you know, if you're 30 inches higher is, you know, because we can't take out any more water. I mean, it's borderline right now, so the sump pump takes care of it. We put that in, what, about 5 years after we moved in. We thought it was a once-in-a-lifetime event when we got home from our honeymoon. We had water coming up through the basement floor. And as it turned out, so we finished the basement and all this. After the third flood, we had Badger Basements come in and dug it all by hand, put the sump pump in. And if, you know, and you guys all live around here in Monona, you know, we're not the only ones. I mean, you know, other people had couches floating in their basements, everything else from the storm sewers, but no sanitary. But ours was mainly just water coming up through the basement floor. But we did that, we took care of it. And we brought in, like Jim wants to do, we brought in fill, we raised up, got the water running away because our lot was real low, so we did all these things. But see, the difference is we're still down below him, so he would actually be up above us. So our concern when I saw this was, oh wow, we can't take on any more water. So we started having discussions about what we could do. And I think we feel somewhat comfortable, but again, I'm not an engineer. We can have all these nice talks, and you know, the builders are great, and Peckins are great, and we're good, want to be good neighbors. But I don't want to take, you know, you know what those homes are worth out there, and what they're selling for. It's a big asset to us, and I don't want anything compromising the value of that house. We're retired too. And so that's kind of where we're at. So we came up with this where we could raise it up a little bit to get the grades coming a little bit closer. We could run it into a little valley and push everything out to the backyards. That's sort of what we came. I think you're going to put in a French drain. And the wing walls are going to help off to the side, and Jason's got more of the details. And then run the water from the roof. I mean, the roof is going to be twice as big as what it is. It's a huge house. I mean, so it's, but he's diverting that out as best he can.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question for clarity?
Yeah.
You're the neighbor to the north?
South.
You're the neighbor to the south?
We're the neighbors to the south.
We're still in public hearing, I think. They don't allow us to ask questions.
Well, I asked, he said,
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
we
just to
could.
clarify, we are to the
Don't know where
south.
he's-
So we're stepping down. We all know that, you know, the house up the street at 5308, he raised his elevation up significantly. That's kind of where the issue. And I think, Jim, you're going to raise yours up anyways a little bit, right?
Yeah, and once again, the Midmore sewer level is determining our floor. And according to Public Works, the information I received from them is that the sewer is 8.5 feet below the surface of Midmore, not the curb, but the surface of Midmore. Once again, that needs to be verified, and it is kind of a determinant factor. The current home does not have water issues, and I'm concerned about going lower into the ground, that we will not have enough pitch for the sewer line from the existing basement floor right now. And I'm not sure that I want to challenge the water table that we know is good right now, but we don't have water issues in the basement. And there's no sump pump in that And other than a huge crack in the foundation wall where water will come in when it rains because the gutters are not, they're clogged. They put gutter helmets or something, some filter on them, and they're full of leaves and they're impossible to blow out. But so other than that, and that goes right to a drain. And so we're kind of boxed in how low we can go. The current 7.5 feet does not include any ventilation ductwork. That's lower already. And that's, if we're building a new home, that's a pretty, I'm running 6'4" in height, and that's running pretty shallow by the time we get the ductwork in. So our goal is to possibly raise that another foot to 1.5 feet. That's to be determined yet. And that's why we were going, first of all, to raise the floor elevation from the existing 1 foot to 1.5 feet.
Okay,
That also gives a good pitch from the floor level going to Midmore. We will have steps in the front, which I like that, and so it will slope off of the driveway level towards Tim and Linda, but the goal is to have the water really pitch towards Midmore. So in effect, the front lawn, if we tightline the lines in the front to the Midmore surface, that will eliminate any roof water that would be going towards Tim and Linda.
okay,
And so that surface water is currently, there's a downspout on the current corner right now that feeds right out onto a sidewalk, onto a driveway, and right into Tim and Linda. I mean, that's the way it flows. We're thinking that we can mitigate all of that by having this water flow towards Midmore, pitch towards Midmore, and so the roof water would be gone. And then any of the upstream water, because we have a driveway right there, and with the landscaping in that, and the pitching towards Midmore, there would actually be less water. We're removing the driveway that's on Tim and Linda's side right now, so that impervious surface is gone. And we would be adding a curb where the existing driveway is right now, recurbing that street, so that I really feel that I've been there one winter, but my son lived there for a couple of years, and when he drives over and that ice forms on that driveway curb, and then you get rain and melt coming in that, I think just the way that leads, the water comes in through that driveway, and that would also be mitigated.
right, Jim? Yeah, if I might, I'm gonna, I appreciate all this detail, but I've got a couple questions from the commission, and the kinds of details you're getting into might be more appropriate for when we get into the next section anyway. Doug, did you have a question?
Mr. Holmberg had his hand raised.
Okay.
If I could, would it be appropriate now if we could just close the public hearing, get staff report?
Exactly.
And then we can, I'm sure John and I have exactly the same questions, and we can interact then with the applicant.
Exactly, that's where I was headed. Thank you,
Can I
Chris.
just say one thing? So everything is up ahead of it, so like Jim was saying, they don't have water fountains at all. It's us and our neighbors next to us that have a serious problem. So I got a call from them like, hey, we're really concerned that there's some pump runs all across the street. So we're where it's flattened out. Our lot, we actually get a break from the city of Monona on our assessment for our land because of our problem. We get all the land values on Midmore Road, we get a little bit of a break because of the water right there. So but that's.
Just as a point of order, you have signed up to speak, so I believe if there's questions that need to be directed back to you, that can happen during
Oh,
our
okay,
conversation.
Yeah, we're good, I'm done, that's good. Yep.
Okay, great, thank you, Tim.
Yep.
And thank you, Jim. I would like to close the public
If-
hearing section and,
If I could.
go to,
I'm sorry,
Sorry?
we have one other person that may be on Zoom as part of the public hearing. I see Jason
Jason F.
F.
Are you here for this hearing?
I think he's just listening then.
Okay,
That's
Yeah, he's with.
Okay,
okay, great.
Yeah.
I had heard from one other person who I was expecting would be logging on, but I don't see them identified here, so sorry
Okay.
about that. Thanks.
okay. Was that someone, heard from one other person that you have something from, like an email or something, Doug, or?
I spoke on the phone and they were planning to join, so they didn't submit any comment. They were going to view the plans, they were going to join by Zoom, but I just don't see them here, so.
Okay, all right, great. Then I will close the public hearing section again and move to 7B, consideration of action on the request by Jim and Mary Jo for approval of a special exception permit for grade change between natural and finished grade greater than 2 feet at 5400 Midmore Road, case number 2-017-2023. Doug?
Thank you. I'll just give a little bit of background here to the request. It's obviously a little different than the commission normally reviews. So the request this evening is for a special exception permit from the grading standards at 5400 Midmore Road. This is necessitated. The Plan Commission review is required because the request is between 2 and 8 feet of difference. The request would regrade the northern portion of the lot closest to 5308 Midmore Road and eliminate the need for retaining walls, and the applicant states would improve drainage between the lots as well. The property itself is zoned single-family residence district and subject to the grading requirements of that section of the ordinance. That states that the difference between the natural grade of the property and the finished grade shall not cumulatively exceed 2 feet at any point on the lot. The special exception permit may be used for anything between 2 and 8 feet if the applicant demonstrates no substantial negative impact to adjoining water bodies or adjacent parcels. Staff are currently reviewing the new home plans. The applicant plans to tear down the existing property and build a new single-family home. There are no other outstanding zoning concerns except for this grading issue, which must be addressed prior to these building permits being issued. As mentioned, the city's consulting engineer, Darren Pope, has reviewed the materials with respect to the city's ordinance. His letter is included in the meeting packet, and he also joins us this evening to answer any questions. As far as recommendations, it's recommended that the commission discuss the appropriateness of the request. Should they choose to approve the application, suggested conditions of approval are included in the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. With that, I will start with Chris Homburg.
Okay. We have some newer commission members, so I'm going to give a brief history of this ordinance. This was brought to us by the mayor before she was the mayor. And it was an ordinance that was brought about because there were quite a few people building very large homes with massive retaining walls right on the property line, right next to their neighbors, and that takes away the enjoyment of that property next door. And so the city felt very strongly that there had to be something in place that you just don't go over that. And there was there was quite a discussion at Plan Commission on this ordinance because we felt there are a lot of instances where it shouldn't have to go to ZBA because it's not this massive hardship you have to prove, but it's something that if it's over 2 feet, then bring it to Plan Commission. Let's make sure somebody regulates and somebody takes a look at it. And that's really the history of this whole thing, because we never used to have this ordinance. And you could correct it, Mary, you were here at or Nancy, I'm sorry, you were at the time when Mary brought it to us. And like I say, it's before she was mayor. But I think that was the genesis of this. And we brought it up to 8 feet because there are instances we talked about where you might have a garage underneath a building or something and it makes total sense. So this is exactly why we said bring it back to Plan Commission, so we could sit here, look at it, don't go through all the expense and it's hard. It's a lot more work to go through ZBA, and that's why it's for those that haven't been here long enough. That's why it's here today, is so we can look at this and make sure, as the ordinance says, it doesn't really hurt the neighboring property like you mentioned, Doug. So brief history.
Yes.
To me, this is the exact case why we said it could be brought to Plan Commission. It makes complete sense on that north side that we've got a building that's out of the ground a little bit, and this one to be able to, I agree with having the basement out of the water and having a driveway that has positive drainage back to the road. And everything about this home that's being built can be better. So it makes no sense to have a retaining wall next to a retaining wall. I looked at that site, your neighbor to the north, and honestly, he probably should have been in here before he did that, because he's over 2 feet for sure. But then to grade them up would be great. I also understand the neighbors to the south's issue. Now, to your south face, you're matching grade pretty much. But then you have those wing walls that you can keep the grade up towards your porch and towards your entry, right?
Correct.
And the wing walls are on the very south of the building. Whether they belong there or a little further north, that's something for you to investigate, but I agree 100% with staff's recommendation that we get a little bit better grading plan. If I read this grading plan, and I look at your contours at the angle, they're pushing it to the south, right? And the one thing we want to do is make sure we don't push any more water than we have to the south. Some goes to the south. I think it's huge that you're tying all your downspouts into piping and taking it out to the street, because that will make a big difference. It's a big roof, but instead of the smaller roof, you'll have virtually no roof water, and that's the water that really attacks you. And if he's working with you to help with low spots, do some grading there and reseed it for you, I mean, I can't ask a neighbor to do more than that. But I would say better grades, so it's just a record of what's happened here, and that's what Darren's here for, Darren, so that on the south end of the building, as we start to go north, we just make sure that they're proposing a grading plan that pushes the water primarily to Midmore, right? And primarily to your rear yard instead of theirs, get it away from there. And if you're doing grading to help keep the water away from theirs on those other flooding events, that's a bonus for you. I feel that you'll be left in a better situation than you are right now if everything happens the way we're talking about, the way we all understand it. Will be better for you. But the only thing I would say is I agree with staff that let's just get it memorialized on how the grading's going to be. So if something were to happen in the future, you say, well, you told me this, you told me that. There's just a record. Where's the water going?
Yeah.
I know it's an extra step from normal building, but in this case, we've got a property there that has some issues with water. And as much as you're solving your issues, we just want to make sure that we leave them better, which I think
we want to leave them
we
better.
leave them better, and I think
Exactly.
that's what you're
Yep.
proposing. But it's
Exactly.
nice to have a record of what you're proposing, because when we're all gone and they replace us, somebody else has a record of what was agreed to there.
Yeah.
So
Can I make a comment?
sure.
Okay, I just want to say that since our submittal, we've met. Okay. Yeah,
Well, they both work
since
now.
our
You might get
submittal-
feedback.
Yeah, I think this one's on, yeah. So since our submittal, we've met and we've come up with, ways to further alleviate, more water coming towards their house. And we're actually gonna build up about 12 inches, on the side of their house, do a retaining wall on the end of their house and direct that water towards the back and then towards Midmore. So not only will we take our roof water and take it further to the back and to Midmore, but we're also gonna build it up a little bit where you're low.
Valley, kind of more in the middle at my foundation.
And that makes perfect sense. It was confusing, you're talking about 30 inches higher, because on the south, the plan doesn't show it being 30 inches higher, but it is as you travel north along your east and west face. So it's just all I'm saying is just make sure we take care of that water. And from what he said and what you said, you're going to be in a much better situation than you are now, especially when you see that water in your backyard creeping closer. And if he does that for you, it won't be quite so nerve-wracking to see that water, because it'll stay further away from your home and less infiltration towards your basement. So
Originally we thought on their south side we thought that it was just going to get graded down.
like the other neighbor did to the north.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, wait a minute, ho.
Yeah.
We're soft already. We can't take anymore. So
Yeah.
we started talking with Jim and Mary Jo and got together with the builders, Jason, his partner. And we got a powwow out there, and we just all kinds of, I wonder if we just raised you up a little bit, and we brought this into a valley and then ran it to the backyard, so there's really nothing here. And everybody's like, that seems like pretty easy solution. And I get it on the north side, that's a mess over there. You know, I mean, it's, you know, it's probably more issues there than on our side, but everything we've talked about, and like I told Jason and Jim, as long as we do everything, to your point, as long as it's all good, we all talk about it, we got, and everybody's, yeah, as long as we do all these things, we all agree that we'll probably, it should be okay, you know?
Right. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
this is
Um,
exactly why,
One thing.
this is
Thank
exactly
you,
why
Tim.
Mary.
Darren, did you want to, since your name was just called out by Chris, did you want to weigh in here?
I guess just in my review letter, I pointed out the fact that, and I think it's all been stated, that the plans weren't very clear as to what's going to happen grading wise between the house to the north at 5308 Midmore. There's just some general notes that says fill and grade this area to drain to the proposed swell. I think we'd like to see a better, with proposed and existing contours and spot elevations there, to see what it is now and then how it's going to change.
Right.
And then I guess as we were talking, Gary, I did notice I'm looking at some plans dated November 22nd from Quam Engineering. They do have some indications of downspouts and where they're going to discharge. So I guess if there is going to be under drains, then maybe that should be added to the plan as well to show where those downspout under drains are going to discharge. Right now, they're just pointing out in every, radially in every direction. And the ones on the south side are pointing due south. So it's sounding like that's not what we want to do here, to direct more roof water to the south. So
Okay.
I think adding those downspout drains to the plans should be something that happens too. And then I don't know if there's going to be some grading that's happening on 5404 Midmore Road. Maybe some indication of that should be added as well.
I agree, we do plan on doing that. And yes, we noticed the downspouts were wrong.
Okay, great, thank you. Doug, you have your hand up?
Thank you. Just a point of clarification I should have mentioned during the staff report. As part of any possible motion, I would request the commission see this as sort of holistic. I would say that there is some grading clearly that's crossing over to 5308, some potentially now to 5404 as well. So really just seeing this as sort of one, I'd say it's one request. It may impact 3 properties, but it's really 5400 is kind of the main point, and of course this grading may cross a property line, but it's, I think, to the benefit, the request here is to the benefit of parties. So if that is just something that the commission is comfortable with, just putting that as a possible finding of fact, I would suggest. That's it. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Susan Fox, I believe you're next.
Well, were you finished?
I was just going to say, this is exactly why Mayor O'Connor put this in, is so that we had neighbors talking, and the neighbors are out talking, and both neighbors will be in a better position because of this than they would be without it. So it's a perfect example of bringing this back and talking it out. So I commend all the parties. They've done a good job working this out, and they will definitely be in a better position once this is done.
Great, thank you, Chris. Susan?
When I looked at the lots, I had a hard time understanding how it wasn't going to affect the lot to the south, and that was a concern to me. So my understanding is there'll be a retaining wall at the south edge of the 5400 property, and then you're talking about building up the land on the other side of that wall, then with the swale. I'm still not clear on how you're handling that grade change as it goes to the lot to the south.
So there will actually be a 2-foot high wall that fades down to nothing coming off the back corner and the front corner of the house, because we're dropping the south side of the house down 2 feet to match up with the existing grade. So the wing walls, and the purpose of that wing wall being on that end is to keep the middle higher so that we can bring the downspouts and bury them and bring them out to the street. So if we had that lower, we wouldn't be able to bring the downspouts out, and they would therefore drain to the south and end up right in their low spot.
Yeah, that's helpful. That was my main concern, really, because it does make sense from the north end. I just wanted to make sure that, because it was clear to me from looking at your lot that it's very low, and that you really don't want to have any more water running on it. So yeah, in our final recommendation, I would add that addresses.
Could I interject one thing, please?
Yeah.
Sure.
I just want to point out that the new low area in the south side between Linda and Ness is my window wells. So I'm going to be the collection point for water. So that's why I'm very, very concerned about those 3 window wells on the south side, because they're going to be below any ground level that Tim and Linda's ever going to see coming out of that thing. And that water will bubble right up through the bottom of those window wells. And so I have a big interest in eliminating as much south side water as possible coming out of that well. In fact, I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. I did a SMACNA review of water coming off the south side roof and location of downspouts, and would have some recommendations on where to locate those to eliminate more of the south side water from the house to the property line.
Right, understood.
So,
Great, thank you, Jim. I believe John's after Susan, I can't see the room, but
That's
is that right? John, I think you're up.
Jim.
Yeah, thanks. Jim, just for clarity on the drawing that we're looking at, there are 4 window wells, not 3. There's 3 facing south and 1 facing
One's on the east side,
near the south.
one's on the east side. That's actually based on the topographical map. I think that elevation is naturally a little bit higher, but not by much, but it is a little bit higher.
So those
The
have,
3 on the south side where, Tim has water coming off his, we would have water coming off ours into that center, and it does now. And so the goal is to elevate Tim's, since we have people in there, we would probably work with Tim to elevate both the property lines so that we both have good flow away from the, both homes, more to the property line itself. But once again, I've expressed concerns to Hart de Noble and to the engineering group about water coming into my basement through the windows in that thing. So my goal would be to eliminate as much water as possible on the south side. Thus, where he has gutters now pointing south, my recommendation would be to have no gutters pointing south. By roof surface calculations using 100-year water flows, which is like 9.8 inches per hour, we can do a gutter on that back side, eliminate one of those downspouts actually, and if we put one to the right side of what's underneath that, where that bulges out, is a master closet. If we put one there, we're behind Tim and Linda's home already.
Right.
Okay, so that water from all that roof forward would go backwards. If we can move the water, the gutter, so it goes towards Midmore and tight line it, then it could go out on the corner of the roof. What's in front of that home is a gable roof, so water is going to go left and right. And so,
Jim, thank you. I'd like to, I love the detail, but can we?
sure, whatever you need.
Why don't we see how the rest of the commission, John, go ahead.
and then I keep hearing 2 wing walls. Those are I believe those are the 2 walls, or not. There's 2 stones shown that look like ovals.
Yes.
Is that what we're talking about? That's a wing wall?
Correct.
Okay.
How long are those going to be?
They'll probably be 8 feet long and go from 2 feet and fade to nothing.
I guess my only comment would be, if I were you folks, I would want some acknowledgement in writing from an engineer saying that there will be no more water, additional water on your property than there is today. Not that it'll get better. If it gets better, that's great, but you don't want any more additional
That's
water.
what we've said, yeah.
And it's hard to tell from the data that we have today. That's all from me.
Thank you, John. Rob?
Yeah, my major concern is your situation, that it only gets better. This needs to be much more holistic, like it's already been said. It's really hard to read this grading plan. And it has to extend beyond the boundaries of this property. I don't have a problem with it as long as the neighbors, especially to the south, are left in a as good or better situation. So that can be done by staff.
Okay.
That's fine, but I don't have an issue with it as long as that's the case.
Okay, thank you. Patrick?
Same as Rob, really. I don't have a problem with it as long as it gets better or stays the same. I don't want the folks to the south to have more water problems.
Right.
And I think we've talked about how that's going to happen. So.
Okay. Right. So with that, if you have a motion,
I'll move with the conditions as written by staff for number 1, but for number 2, we modify it to state that the applicant shall complete plans, including the neighbors at 5308 Midmore Road and 5408 Midmore Road, and submit the...
5404.
Did I say 8? I wrote 4. 5404. Well, it's the same. Your name was wrong, too. And 5404 Midmore Road, and submit the comprehensive grading plan showing all parts of the project area for final review by city staff to confirm, I won't say confirming that no additional water is how should I word that? Confirming no additional water runoff to the property to the south, or 5404 Midmore, however you want to word it.
yeah.
So if I need a second first.
Second.
If I could just explain that, the engineering plan will be confirmed by one of Ryan Quam's engineers that this is the plan. The city will still review it and say, yeah, this is okay, but he will confirm on the plan that the water, we won't be shoving any additional water, and hopefully it'll be what you stated, that there will be less water on their property. That would be the best thing to do as a good neighbor.
No, correct. And I think what we're gonna have to do is, we're gonna have to tie the neighboring homes into the plan.
Correct.
And
That's why I said a
expand it.
comprehensive
Correct.
plan,
Yes.
including the parts of
Yeah.
both those lots, and that's what the city, what your engineer will prepare and the city will review, just to
Yeah.
confirm it,
Correct.
and the city will approve it. That'll be part of
So I'll
the,
call Quam tomorrow and we'll get that going.
they're quite capable of
Oh, yeah.
doing this.
Yep. Yep.
So I just wanted to explain to you why I reworded it a little bit.
And
It's
that
just,
will be in the actual engineering plan, sort of like you said, the guarantee.
there will be an engineering plan signed by their engineer, reviewed by our engineer, that shows the water runoff, where it's going. That'll be a matter of record for the conditional use approval for this change of grade.
Okay.
So that'll be in the city annals for wherever you put it. So it will go with the property.
Okay, great. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you,
Good luck.
Jim. Thank you all. Thank you, Darren Pope.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep, thank you.
With that, I'll move to number 7C, public hearing on possible recommendation of City Council for an ordinance amendment to Chapter 480 of the Monona Municipal Code of Ordinances regarding accessory structures and shore yard and maximum lot coverage, case number 2-018-2023. Who would like, Doug, are you presenting on this?
I will be presenting on this, yes.
Okay.
So I'll sort of give an overview of the proposal here. So this is in response to a number of building permit applications that have come through in the last couple of years for in-ground swimming pools in the shore yards of the property. These are only permitted per current ordinance in the rear or side of properties and not within the shore yard. This has led to a number of variance requests seeking exceptions from the ordinance. And the request has come to city staff to evaluate the current city ordinance along with adjacent communities, and evaluate possible revisions to these ordinance with suggestions as put forward this evening. So as way of background, in-ground swimming pools fall within the accessory buildings and structures section of the single and two-family ordinances, and both will be considered this evening. The only accessory buildings allowed in the shore yard, which is defined as the portion of the yard abutting a body of water beyond the house and between the water and the house, are boathouses, boat shelters, boat landings, and piers. This means that any request for a new swimming pool has caused the need to go to a zoning board of appeals for a variance for that. One thing worth noting is that existing pools may be rebuilt as long as their footprint does not expand or move, although that has proved quite challenging and limiting for property owners. The total area of accessory buildings and structures, which would include swimming pools, boathouses, sheds, detached garages, allowed within the property is 1,000 square feet, and that's a total of 1,000 square feet. And they're also subject to the lot coverage standards, which is a total of 40%, which is the area covered of the lot covered by structures, period. So that could be the main structure, the main house, the shed, detached garage, all those things. And additionally, the maximum impervious surface standards are either 65 or 70% impervious, depending on the lot size as well. So swimming pools are also regulated by the building construction chapter of the city ordinance. And generally these are more construction standards, but they do also include setbacks and also mention and sort of mirror the zoning that only allow them in the rear or the side yard. Also, additionally here, they do not allow the water line to be any closer than 5 feet from the property line. So a little different than the setback, just sort of creating that greater buffer there for the water line. So staff did look at adjacent municipalities for sort of comparison, both nearby communities, but also those with lakefront lots and properties. And generally, these are allowed in the side, rear, and shore yards of properties. Of course, they must have always follow the floodplain zoning standards and be above the regional flood elevation. So I won't go through these, but I did include examples from sort of adjacent communities and sort of called out the main elements there. And you can see Maple Bluff, McFarland, Middleton, Shorewood Hills. There's a lot of examples there, and you'll see that sort of feeds into the recommendation. So I did, on page 3 of the staff report, of part of the memo, did make suggestions to the ordinance. This is, again, for both single and two-family. This is just for the zoning section of the ordinance, really trying to strike a balance between addressing some of these challenges, coming in line maybe a little bit more with adjacent communities, while also sort of fitting within the framework that is the existing ordinance and not sort of adding additional sections or anything like that. So the text in the memo that was included in red is the proposed changes, proposed additions. The first one is within the minimum setbacks section for the shore yard, that in-ground swimming pools that are at least 25 feet back from the ordinary high water mark, clear of the regional floodplain, are permitted, and additional elements such as slides, diving boards, and pool houses be prohibited. A couple elements here. The 25-foot setback would still create that buffer from the lake, would still create that setback there, that these would not be right on the shoreline. Again, there's certainly overlap there with the floodplain, making sure that they're clear of that. And then the Zoning Board of Appeals in the variances that they were approving were very concerned about the cross views and sort of the impact. Of course, an in-ground pool is very minimal, without the additional elements. So any conditions, typical conditions they included, prohibited slides, diving boards, pool houses, anything like that in addition. So they were very, fairly discreet in nature. So sort of mimicking that in the shore yard section. And again, given the in-ground nature of these, excluding them, the suggestion here for the lot coverage section is that they be excluded from that 1,000 square feet. Again, that the thinking here being that they're below grade, they're not sort of an additional structure per se. And I think sort of the intent of that would really be that there not be many additional structures sort of to the main house that are there. Of course, this would still be subject to the lot coverage, the 40%, as well as the impervious there as well. So A few things to consider. The sort of blurb at the end there in the staff report outlines some of the reasons and justifications for this. Certainly with the lot coverage, I think there's a few ways to do it. Looking at sort of the adjacent municipalities, could potentially scale with the size of the house, for example, the size of the lot. Of course, that 1,000 square feet is across the board here in the city, regardless of lot size, so something else to consider. But these are put forward for discussion, and I will also say that were this to go to City Council for consideration, there would be accompanying changes recommended to the building section, to Chapter 175, outside of the purview of the Plan Commission, but that would, of course, mimic and make sure there not be any conflict between the two. That's it for me.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. With that, we'll close the public hearing section and go to consideration of action on the possible recommendation to the City Council for ordinance amendment, Chapter 480 of the Municipal Code of Ordinances regarding accessory structures to shore yard and maximum lot coverage, case number 2-018-2023. Doug, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing else to add. Thank you.
Okay. With that, I'll go to commission members. Patrick, do you want to start on this one?
Sure. I really don't have anything to say against what the recommendation is from staff at this point, so I'm okay with it.
Okay. Thank you. Rob?
Yeah, not a lot to add. I do like the addition of the 25-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark. I think that's one of the more important things. So,
Okay.
no, I don't have any issues with the recommendation.
Okay. Great. Thank you. John?
The question that I would ask is, an in-ground pool on a relatively flat piece of property is not very visible. But if the property has significant slope to it, the pool could be very visible at one end, right?
Yeah.
Was that considered by staff?
I think there's a couple ways that could be considered. The first could be subject to that grade, a very similar grade change discussion as we just had. I think some of that, depending on how much is exposed, could, they could get around it that way, I guess. One, there were a couple pieces of language in here that I struggled from adjacent municipalities of how they maybe enforce it in terms of, and there could be a screening type condition or something that maybe there's landscaping or something, along those lines. If there's a significant exposure, the slope and there's a lot of concrete visible or something like that, arborvitae or something like that be there. So that's certainly something that could be considered. I think a little difficult, it would be more case by case, but absolutely an important factor.
That's all I have.
Anything else, John?
No, thank you.
Susan?
Nothing to add. I thought the changes looked good and appropriate.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I think this is a long time coming. Our ordinance never meant to exclude pools from lake lots, but as you know, we bought the ordinance out of the trunk of a car that said, I've got a perfect ordinance for lake communities, and we've been fixing it ever since. I do have a couple comments. It's a good comment on a pool being too high, and I like the way to do it with any more than a 2-foot grade change has to be seen. I don't like the idea of screening, because the one thing you don't want to do in a lake yard is put in screening to block your neighbor's view. If we put in arborvitaes or trees or anything else, it blocks view. So I think we have to be very clear about that, to the point of we should talk about fences, because a pool has to be fenced. But if it's in a lake yard and it's going to block your neighbor's view, it needs to be one that you can see through, not a full privacy fence, because the pool owner is going to want to have a privacy fence. Well, if that blocks the neighbor's view, then I think you've got to accommodate your neighbors to do this, for the same reason we don't put in accessory buildings other than a boathouse back there, is for the view. So I think we just have to add some verbiage about the fences. She'll be able to see through the fences. And then I'd like to talk about one other thing, which would be the diving boards. Most of the diving boards people put into their pools in the backyard are about that high off the concrete. And I don't think anybody would complain about that. So I think we should add that a diving board that's more than 2 foot above the concrete deck is disallowed. But let them, if they just want to have, most of them put a little, I think we all know about everything on their head. They put a little simple diving board in that's real tight to the deck, and we should let them do that. So those would be the couple changes I would make. I think the changes are good. I think the 25 feet from ordinary high water mark, there's going to be a couple that are going to be a problem, and they should go back to ZBA for it. And why I say it, we have a lot of really steep shorelines. And because of that, there's not a lot of usable line up there, but that pool might be 15 feet above the lake. No threat at all for flooding or ordinary high water, but it might only be 20 feet from ordinary high water, which is at the bottom of the cliff. So that would be an exception, and that's so rare, I would think that would be a thing to go to ZBA and say, here's my hardship. I'm not doing anything you didn't want, but other than that, it's great. And I'm going to add one more thing. I agree 100% it's exempt from lot coverage requirements, because I will argue all day long that that pool will take more water than a grass lawn. There will be less runoff, because if you look at most pools, they evaporate a lot. People are always adding to their pools. Average situation, a pool will be down at least an inch or two from its overflow. And an inch or two of water totally being captured there is a lot better than a grass yard can do. So I think we're actually having less runoff by having a pool there. I'm not saying it's an environmental fix for anything. I'm just saying it's lessening the runoff. So I think to exclude it from any lot coverage requirements is appropriate.
Yes. A couple points, if I may. It jogged my memory. The fencing that would be. This would be in 175 again in building, but typically in the shore yard, fencing may not be greater than 42 inches, and the pool ordinance is 4 feet, so there's a slight discrepancy there. But certainly a transparent fence,
Yes.
kind of a...
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, the aluminum type fence.
Yes, exactly.
Has that visible transparency. So I think something like that is important. And certainly one thing to acknowledge as well is the OHWM is a departure from the typical ordinance for the shore yard. Typically, it's meander line that we use. Most other communities are using OHWM. That was something that was considered, and I just want to acknowledge that the reason for that is I think it's easier definition, and it sort of meets the goal of being clearer from the water. Meander line is subject to a little more variability. So just for anybody following along, that's sort of the reason.
Much more variable for the meander line. So can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Then would the opacity of the fence, that it can be see-through, would that be then in the building ordinance that you're changing and not in what we do as plan commission?
I think we would need to change the fence section, which would be in building, but it could be, there's clearly overlap. I think it would be reasonable. Talking here about slides, diving boards, there'll be the 2 foot change for the boards.
Mm-hmm.
Could say safety railings included with 50% opacity or something like that.
That's more than that. We'll
But
just say that.
Yeah, something measurable, I guess.
So you would add that?
Yeah.
I would include
We'll
that
add
in
it to
zoning.
this
Yeah,
then
that
in the
makes
building.
sense.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually thought about the diving boards. That makes sense to me.
That's why when
Well,
that's why when we talk about everything together, it
Right.
helps jog memories
It
and
does.
helps bring things up.
Anything else? Do I have a motion?
Sure, I would make a motion that we adopt staff's recommended verbiage with a change as we get down into the first one, Doug, where it says elements such as slides, diving boards more than 2 foot off the pool deck, and pool houses are prohibited. Additionally, any fencing may not be allowed that substantially blocks the neighbor's view. And then, your in-ground coverage, just the way you wrote it.
I would second that.
And I saw John squint about the way I was trying to fumble through to get something for the fences. Do you have a better idea?
No, I'm just visible from where?
Well, the neighbors.
I know, but from their house, from their shoreline, from, you know what I mean?
It gives staff the ability to know the intention is that they can't put up a fence that just blocks the view,
Right.
right? And they have to have one for safety. So
Yep.
what we're anticipating is like those aluminum fences or whatever, that you can see through a lot more than you can. So I don't really know how to word that. But I think it's important that we make it clear that they can't just put up a board-on-board fence and block everything else. 'Cause if I had a pool, I'd like to have privacy, but in the lake shore, you just can't do that.
Would it work if you said obstructing or further obstructing the existing view?
Well, there's gonna be some minor obstructing, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why I put in substantially.
Okay.
When it gets to council, you can wordsmith it.
Thanks.
Because you've been here for the discussion, you know the intent.
Yeah, I know the intent. Is how to word it.
Yeah, that gives you at least a week to think about it.
Yep.
Sorry.
Well, if we left the wording as that, which is to say substantially, whatever Chris said,
Can we add the
substantially
language as
obstructs,
determined by Chris?
then, I mean, if somebody's putting in a pool, they'd have to come for a building permit anyway,
Yes.
which means that we would be notifying the neighbors, would we not?
No. Building permits are by right. If they follow the process, that's administrative.
Oh, so only if it's a variance.
Correct.
So it's important that our building inspector is aware of this too. When we change building inspectors, there's some things we've always done in Monroe that they didn't know about. Things happen that we didn't want. So the hard part is when we keep changing building inspectors, it's like a learning session for the new building inspector, what that means. But having some verbiage at least alerts them to what we're thinking.
Well, and something to consider here, the fencing being part of zoning would allow this to potentially be considered by ZBA as well.
Oh, yeah.
That's the review body.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If there's a case where they can put up a privacy fence and it doesn't block anybody's view, ZBA could do that.
Is chain link allowable?
Not in the, I don't believe in the shore yard. I would have to double check that. The fencing, it's fencing or a particular cover that can withstand, I think it's 300 pounds or something.
Yeah.
There's a certain type of cover.
We also don't allow fencing in a shore yard.
Only 42 inches.
Yeah, and even then, we're very particular about where it goes.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's just to keep all those views. It's to keep from the neighbor wars.
So I guess my point is that as either the building inspector or you are reviewing any kind of pool plans, are you suggesting, Doug, that if there were concerns about it blocking views, you could bring it to the ZBA as opposed to?
Yes, just as a point of process, any pool application would come across the planning desk for review, so that it would certainly be reviewed that way as well.
Right.
Chris had
Could I suggest then, if the planning administrator has to look at it, as always, if there's something he's not sure of, he can always bring it back to plan commission for an approval. So it'd be, you approve it all the time, and if you're in a fight with somebody that said, no, we're not gonna allow it, let them bring it to plan commission. It's a simpler step than going to ZBA.
The burden is a little simpler.
Oh, yeah, the burden for them. But that gets you off the hook of being the bad guy if you're just really, just totally butting heads.
Are we gonna have like, are there 50 pools waiting to be built?
No.
Does anyone know? No, there aren't, right?
It's been a problem the last 2-3 years. There's been a lot of applications, right? We've talked about it here
Yes,
before. And it's just, it shouldn't have to go to ZBA. It just shouldn't.
Hey, do I have a motion?
In a second.
Yep.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to number 8, reports from staff and commission members.
I will be very brief. I know folks are trying to get out. just upcoming items. Obviously, we'll be canceling the second December meeting with the holidays, looking to reconvene most likely early January, January 8th. Got a couple requests, a couple zoning permit items coming through that we're working on to hear. One of which, Yahara Terrace coming through for a new dog run, fencing area, very similar to the current two. And then most likely one or two new businesses as well. So, that's it.
Great. Do we have any updates on groundbreaking for Besa?
Yes, so we're going through that right now at a staff level. They're going to be pulling demolition permits separate from construction for sort of the vertical construction, but expecting demolition permits to be issued this week for Besa. Of course, it's already fenced, and so they'll be moving. We expect they'll be moving forward. The team is looking to move. The development team is looking to move on that one. And then there were on-site meetings last week with Bloom as well on Monona Drive, and permits have been issued for demolition for that one as well.
So both of them before certainly within the next couple of weeks?
Progress.
We should see
Yes,
demolition?
definitely.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any updates on diversity, equity, inclusion, or sustainability?
Nothing from staff.
Nor do I have anything. Any plan commission requests for information from city staff? Okay. I see here discussion regarding election of interim plan commission chair in the case of absence of city alders.
That was a request that came out from a couple meetings ago. Certainly, if the commission would like to discuss it this evening, alternatively, we could push it. I'm seeing shaking heads. We can push that into the new year. There's a football game that I was not aware of that may be about to begin.
Yeah. Okay. Then, with that being the case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I wish everybody a very happy holiday.
Thank you, Nancy.
Likewise.